All right, my name is Ryan Bundy. I'm the son of Cliven Bundy, and we live on a ranch in Clark County, Nevada.
There's a lot of news out there saying that you guys didn't actually get on the land. Channel 8 did some article about how you guys were from Arizona and whatnot. Can you clear that up for the
Sure, I can. Okay, if you're following the Bundy family, we originally came from Nebraska, and my great-great-grandmother joined the Mormon church, the LDS church. Some missionaries were back there. They were originally from Bunkerville, the missionary was, and my grandmother joined the Mormon church in Nebraska. Now she wanted to come west, and my grandfather did not. He did not join the church until there was an incident. People were mean to my grandmother, and so he said, all right, let's go west. And on the trail, he decided also to join the church, and he was baptized in Logan, Utah. They came to Bunkerville because of the missionary that was from Bunkerville. His name was actually Bunker, Elder Bunker, and so they came to Bunkerville originally. Now they didn't settle down right away. They bought some land in Beaver Dam, Arizona, which is just across the border. But then they moved to Mexico, to the Mormon colonies in Mexico. And then they came, then there was the Mexican-American War, and the United States government said the Americans coming out of there, they'd send them to anywhere they wanted to. So they had some friends or something, they went clear up to Oregon. They went to Oregon, and things didn't work out there for them, so they come back here to Beaver Dam. And I don't know why they didn't stay Beaver Dam again, but then they went down to St. Thomas and Kaylin, which those are two towns that are now buried under Lake Mead, so they're ghost towns now. But it was awful hot, awful dry, and so they were looking for a little cool weather, and they went back over to Arizona, to the Arizona Strip, up to Mount Trumbull, and they finally settled down there on Mount Trumbull. And so the Bundy family did come from that area. Now, what everybody is not considering is the other side of my family. All right, my grandmother, who was a Jensen, who had family ties to the names of Abbott and to Levitt and to Adams, she grew up here in Mesquite. Now our range rights here on this Bunkerville mountain here actually started with my grandmother's side. Now when my grandfather met my grandmother and married her, he moved back over to here, which again we had old ties, you know, kind of moving around, but we still had some old ties here, and he married my grandmother, and they inherited some of the old range rights from my grandmother's side. So when people are saying that the Bundys weren't here until such and such a date, and they didn't have the range rights here until such, you know what, they're right, but they're not considering the range rights that were here from my grandmother, all right? And so our rights do trace back to 1877. Not all the way in the Bundy family name, but through some of these other names.
And a lot of other states are having BLM issues too. More of the western states is happening. I just heard a story today about Oklahoma and Texas right now, something going on there. What do you believe is behind all of this BLM, like the land grab?
Well, I've heard all kinds of things, and I don't know the absolute truth. I mean, a lot of these things I believe are done in secret combinations. You know, one of the rumors is that the United States government has used these public lands as collateral to all the debt that they've been taking in from other countries, China particularly, and that they're not able to pay this debt, and so now they're trying to give the land to these foreign countries as collateral. Now, I don't know if that's true. It may be, it may not be, but there's definitely a power grab. You know, in the olden days, the king owned all the land, and the people were not citizens. They were serfs, they were slaves, they were, you know, just subjects of the king. And that is what America's moving towards when they're trying to grab all the land. They don't want us to have rights. That's why they deny that our rights exist. See, and they've got all kinds of people in the media questioning them. They're questioning our, the history there. All of this is tried to destroy the rights of the people, because the king don't want the subjects to have rights. They want to retain all the rights and privileges to themselves, and only allow their serfs, their slaves, to have whatever little pickings they allow them to have. But that's not what America is built upon.
So you guys decided to take a stand. Are you the last cattle ranchers in Nevada right now?
Just in Clark County.
Clark County.
Okay. There's a couple little people that have 5 or 6 head type of here and there, but as far as real ranchers making a living on the land, we are the last ones in Clark County. At one point there were 52 ranchers in Clark County. We're the only ones left. I know that they've decimated all the ranches across Southern California and the deserts. I know that like Wyoming are claiming that they have about 50% of the cattle they had 10 years ago. Across to Nevada, Utah, well, all these western states, the cattle numbers are dwindling significantly. Back in the 60s, Elko County, Nevada, which is directly north of here, several counties, claimed that they were the cattle capital of the world. Well, they don't even come close to even being on the scale anymore. Okay, so many cattle have been removed from that area. That's all part of this land grab and control grab.
Some people in Las Vegas that are my friends wanted to know, besides people being here, would you need help with like getting the ranch back together? We know the BLM destroyed water tanks and fences and stuff. Would you be welcoming help out here for that, or do you guys have guys to take care of it?
Well, there's been a lot of people wanting to help, and where we want to accept that help, I don't know, like the water tank that they destroyed was a 12,000 gallon steel water tank that was probably a used fuel tank at one time that we cleaned out, and then the staff, fixed it up for a water tank. And we set that, we drove into the place, set it down with the trailer really easily, and then we run a water line for several miles to feed that water tank. And we do that with a tractor. We roll the line out, and then we have a plow behind the tractor that plows it under the ground. Now, there is a significant amount of investment with pipe and with, the materials. And the labor takes a few days, but it's not tremendous, is what I'm saying. And, but we ought to get a work project together and then invite people to come participate. As far as really needing the help terribly bad, maybe not so much, but we would like people to participate just for the experience. I know that they knocked down a piece of a corral, and it'd be good to have a little help to put that back together. I think that right now we're spending so much time with the media and with all of this that we can't seem to get the work done, but I'll have to see if we can get something organized. So.
I just had a couple more questions. Now, the media is going crazy with the comments that Cliven made, and those who are awake understand what he was saying, but could you explain it a little bit, because they just went with the twisted it and...
Sure. Well, what I want to explain on that is that my father is a very loving person, and he loves everybody. And he is actually concerned about the black community and Hispanics and Native Americans and others. He's concerned about their freedom. He's concerned about their well-being, and he wants them to be able to prosper. Now, I don't know how exactly all this got started. I know that the party we had last week, we didn't have a lot of the ethnic groups here, and he was concerned about that. He wanted to reach out to them and bring them in. Now, he may have fumbled over his words, but I know his intent and his heart is trying to share with those people and to bring them here so that we can help bring them greater liberty. There may be an element of ignorance on his side. I know that we hear the stories from history, etc., but we weren't there. That was 165 years ago that slavery was intact, and yet since then they've suffered a lot of indignities as well. Now, they're still suffering some indignities, as well as all of us are. And what he's trying to do is saying, come and join us. Help us, not help us, but help yourself, help us together gain some more of that dignity back by gaining more liberties and freedoms that the federal government is taking from us.
Right.
That's his message.
Right, because you guys, you understand that this is bigger than you.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
your whole family understands that this is about standing up against tyranny, right?
Correct.
How do you feel about that?
Well, you know, just to extend with what I've been talking about, you know, the tyranny of the federal government, and quite honestly, it's not just the federal government, but other governments show levels of tyranny also. But the tyranny of government, I guess I should say, is very intrusive. I've read it so many times, but I'm going to read it again. From the, you see this is my pocket copy of the Constitution, and in it is the Declaration of Independence. The reason so many people are flocking to us, and this is the same thing with the black community, it says right here, it says, experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms which they are accustomed. Okay, we the people are suffering because of the tyranny of government. The black people are suffering because of tyranny of the government. The Hispanics, the Native Americans, all people are suffering because of the tyranny of government. But it says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. Okay, so in our case, when they were here with snipers and with 200 agents and with surveillance equipment and helicopters, does that not prove evidence that they were trying, evidence of a design to reduce us to absolute despotism? Okay, and this is what my father is talking about with the black community. There's other things different than what we're doing, but there's things amongst their community that is reducing them to absolute despotism. And so he's trying to reach out to them and say, I care about you. I love you, and your freedom is as important as mine. And I want to share that with you. We're in a movement to gain freedom back and self-respect and prosperity. And I want you to join with me. Now, if he fumbled over his words, we're sorry about that. But he's not sorry about his message, because his message is pure. Okay, let me go on with that. This, it says, anyway, back to the absolute despotism. When it reaches that point, it says it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. And that's what we are here doing. Okay? And we want to include everybody. Everybody.
Yeah.
I have one last question. Lisa Marie was saying that Cliven's grandson, I'm not sure whose son it was, but he was a 16-year-old on a horseback down there, and they had the standoff Saturday, and he had the BLM agent pointing the gun right at him, and he looked at his brother and said, you know, I think if I'm going to go, we're going to go the right way. And he said, looked back at the BLM agent and said, release the cattle. And he had stated that he thought that he was going to die that day. The BLM agent did back down, but do you know about that story? Or?
I don't know all the details of that, but I do know that the BLM knew who we were. They knew, they had done their homework, their surveillance, whatever. And when we were up there on that line, we saw the BLM agents pointing each one of us brothers out and then directing their guns at us to kill us first. Because they figured if they can take out the Bundys, they might take out the whole movement. Okay, so I did see that happen. Now, my young brother, Arden is his name, is a very brave soul. And he's 16 years old, but he wasn't the only one. Every person up there on that line was a brave soul. I want to tell you about another one. I haven't seen him around here so much the last few days. I guess he shies away from crowds a little bit. But there's a little Russian guy that lives around here. And quite honestly, I don't know where he really lives. He kind of stays in a tent and he kind of is here a little bit. But he's been a friend of my family for a long time. Now, he was up there on that front line. Now remember, he's from Russia. Okay? he was on the ground with an American flag, and he was moving forward. And when the horses come to stop at a line, he didn't stop and he kept going forward. And my brothers rushed up there and grabbed him and said, "Come back." He says, "No." He goes, "I left Russia." He goes, "This is not Russia, and I'm not going to live like this any longer." Holding that flag, showing that courage. And he says, if I have to be the first one to die to bring this movement about, it, so be it. That little Russian guy was as brave as any man I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He says, this is not Russia. I'm not going to put up with it here.
Sir, can you describe the enclave clause in the Constitution, which is which was it? Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
Okay.
And it says something about it authorizes Congress to own and purchase and control land in a state under specific and limited conditions.
Correct.
Limited conditions. And I was just wondering why, we have a lot of the mainstream media that is twisting everything, talking about the Constitution, but they never talk about the limited aspect of it.
All right, let me read that clause to you. Again, this is Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Now, it starts out that says, Congress shall have power to, and then it moves down to here. It says, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such a district not exceeding 10 miles square, as may by session of a particular state and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States. So let me stop there. That's about halfway through. Does anyone recognize what that 10-mile square is that they're talking about? Washington, D.C. Okay, so we said Congress shall have exclusive legislation. In other words, they have complete power over this district. We give them that 10-mile square for the seat of government. All right, now let's go on. And to exercise like authority over all places, now here's the kicker here, purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be. Okay, so in other words, now we're talking about a state here. So if they want land within a state, it says they have to do what? They have to purchase it, and they have to get the state legislature's consent. But it doesn't stop there. It says, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. Okay, in other words, they can purchase land with the state legislature consent for those 5 reasons, no other. So then let me ask you, the Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, Forest Service, monuments, recreation areas, wildernesses, okay, do any of these fit that bill? Does the federal government have constitutional right to own land within a state except for what's written here? Okay. The only other place that it talks about land within, for the federal government is in Article 4, which talks about territories. The federal government does not own territories, but they have the right to control them until that they can be turned into states. Once a state enters the Union, it enters in upon equal footing with the original 13 states. That's also in Article 4. Did the original 13 states have federal land in them? They didn't, because the federal government didn't even exist when they started. They were an entity unto themselves. Each state, colonies if you would call them, but once they gained their independence from England, they were 13 separate countries. Now, evidence of this is in the treaty, the peace treaty that basically ended the Revolutionary War. It was signed by 14 states. The 13 states were obvious. Who was the 14th state? Does anyone know who the 14th state that signed the treaty that brought peace after the Revolutionary War? Anyone have an answer for that? It was the state of Great Britain. All right? So if you understand the definition of a state, look it up in your dictionaries, whatever. The definition of a state is the exact same as the definition of a nation. Okay? and the terms are often back and forth a little bit. So that treaty was signed by 14 states, and it lists them. I've actually seen it. I wish I had a copy of it to show you. But it was signed by the state of Great Britain, okay? Now, we in America have almost been trained to believe that a state is nothing more than a district. In fact, that's what the BLM, they don't call it the state of Nevada, they call it the District of Nevada. I don't know if you realize that, but they don't recognize statehood. They call it a district. Or in Canada, they're called provinces, okay? A province is not the same definition as a state. A state, yeah, I got stuck there earlier today too. A state is a much greater status and entity than a province or a district, okay? And so technically, if you want to listen to or figure out what the United States is, okay, think of the word union. Is union a thing of one? Okay, can I be united with myself? Okay, no. But you guys are all here together united with me right now.
Betcha.
Okay, so a union is a group of many. Okay, now we're one group, so I guess we're one under that deal, but without many, it can't be a union. Okay, so we are the United States. Okay, it's not one. We're not, quite honestly, and I'll probably get media backlash for this statement too. When I say the Pledge of Allegiance, I don't say one nation under God. I say 50 nations under God. United, or I say 50 nations united under God. Okay? We're still united. We're still one. I still love the United States of America, but I do recognize the individual entity of each state.
Exactly.
Okay? The sovereignty is the key word there. That's right.
I have one more question.
Okay.
I've been out here a few times and I've gotten to go to the camps. How's everybody getting along out here? Do you want to talk about that? Or?
Well, we've had a few little scuffles of misunderstandings, you know, and we're trying to bring, you know, a unity and stuff, and so nothing major, but we're trying to. I'll tell you what, the Lord has been so involved with so much of these things. We know that the opposition, Satan, is going to try to wiggle his way in here and cause problems. So that's to be expected. We're trying to stay on a high moral ground and trying to be true to the principles that Christ taught us, to love one another and to get along. And so
How does the federal government get away with going against the Constitution with supposedly owning 80–90% of Nevada?
we the people have let it happen. We the people haven't read and understood. We the people, you know, it's mostly our own fault. Now, and so that's what we're doing now. Finally, and quite honestly, I had 3,000 of these copies. They're in the back of a truck in Utah right now. I wish I had them here to share them with you. But we are finally starting to read, starting to learn and understand. And so it's our own ignorance that has allowed this to happen. No longer.
I want to say something about the Constitution. I've been going to different meetings, seminars, and I've been hearing several times that the Constitution has been suspended. And recently, yesterday, I opened a video from Deborah Tavares, and she said it very clearly, the Constitution has been suspended. So I try not to believe it's true, but what do you think about that?
You know, there is all, again, I don't know the truth of things. These are, legally, no one can suspend the Constitution. The Constitution is the definition of the Constitution. I wish I knew it. There's a lot of countries that have a Constitution that's not written. Okay, the Constitution is their common knowledge, their common sense, their common belief. Okay, we have written our Constitution. All right, now if it's suspended, then it's suspended in our own hearts because we don't know it and understand it. Now, if the government has said they've suspended it, that's not true. They may think they have, but Let me just read this
They
thing.
are trying.
Article 6, Clause 2, it says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof. I am going to skip a line there. Shall be the supreme law of the land. Can that be suspended?
No.
Shall be the supreme law of the land. Now, this is what we call the Supremacy Clause. And so many people refer to the Supremacy Clause as, oh, it makes the federal government more powerful and everybody has to submit to whatever rules they make, but they forget that other line. It says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in what? In pursuance thereof. Pursuance thereof what? This Constitution. So in other words, laws that are made that do not agree with this Constitution are not laws at all.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Obamacare.
Yeah.
No law at all.
Obama don't care.
Can I ask another question, sir, please?
Say again?
Can I ask another question?
Sure,
please?
go ahead.
Okay. I read that your grandparents has been on this land for a very long time. Who really does belong this land to? Is it the Ruby Treaty or who really owns this land?
The,
Ruby
what?
Treaty.
The Ruby Treaty?
Ruby Treaty, I read it that the West Shoshones never sold the land to the government. The government ordered $26 million to them, but they refused it. They told them not to do any nuclear threats over there on this land. So who owns this land, really?
You know, I'm not familiar with that treaty. Now, was that treaty while it was
I
still a
just read it.
territory, or was it after it was made states, or,
This
you know?
Ruby Treaty is 1976, and they were talking about the two sisters. I don't remember their names, because I've been reading and
Dan
through so much
sisters?
info. Yeah.
The Dan sisters.
Yes, the Dan
Okay.
sisters. Yes.
Yes, and I know the Dan sisters, and they are actually good friends of ours.
Very good.
Okay, and I know, and so now that you bring that up, I don't believe that that treaty included in land down this far. I know that it included land further north in Nevada, and so I don't know the exact boundaries. I am familiar with that slightly, but not well enough to speak well on it. So if I say anything, doesn't matter what I say, it's probably not going to be correct.
So does really the government, the BOM, has the real deed of this land, that it's the owner of this land?
No, I don't believe that. In fact, that's the crux of part of our message, is that the BLM does not own it. Now, they're claiming ownership because of the Enabling Act of Nevada. I could explain that to you. You want me to explain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Every state that has entered the Union, except for the original 13 states. So even the states that came in that were further back east, the west of the Allegheny Mountains, and you know, they were part of the Northwest Territories originally, and then the Louisiana Purchase became territories, and they became states. And then there was the Western lands, which came in after the Mexican-American War and through the Treaty of Guadalupe de Hidalgo. Okay, these were kind of the three major land acquisitions of the United States. Every state that entered the Union had what they called an Enabling Act. Part of the Enabling Act was to clear the title so that there wasn't any clouded title. Just like when you buy a house, you got to have title insurance, and it goes through a process to make sure there's no liens or etc. against it. And title, so when it becomes a state, there's nothing holding it back. Okay. In the Enabling Acts, and every single one of them are almost worded identically, it says that as a territory, and there's a key part there, okay, it doesn't say as a territory, but they are a territory at this point. A territory is different from a state. A territory is like an adolescent. What it does as an adolescent doesn't count when it becomes an adult. All right, so consider that in mind, that a territory is an adolescent. But in the Enabling Act, it says, we forever disclaim all title to this land, okay? That forever is up when it becomes a state, because now it's left its adolescence and now it's a different entity. It's no longer a territory, it's now a state. All right, but that's what they do, is they disclaim all the rights, all the land forever, so that they have clear title. And then once it becomes a state, according to Article 4, it enters in upon equal footing, and all the land belongs to the state, not the territory, the state. Okay. And then the state then will go back and recognize all the private properties, go back and recognize all the rights, and you know, that's where our grazing rights and stuff come in and so forth. Okay? In all the states up, you know, through the Northwest Territories and the Louisiana Purchase, everything was honored properly. I need to back up one more deal. The federal government never owned that land, okay? But when it becomes into the state, all the unappropriated lands, the federal government would act as a caretaker, but the word a trustee. Okay, a trustee. Say like a child, parents die when he's young, he inherits a house. Well, he's not 18, he's not an adult. That's put into a trustee. The trustee handles the estate until he becomes an adult, and then it's given to him, you know, according to the will or whatever the case might be. So in this case, the federal government acts as a trustee. They don't own the land. The trustee don't own the house. Okay, the house belongs to the state and the people, like the land does, and the trustee had obligation to dispose of that land. Okay, and that's where we see like the Homestead Act and different things like that going on. Okay, that's all kind of that part of that disposal, but they have no right to hold it. Okay, now in these western states, that disposal never took place. Okay, they still don't own it. They are illegally holding it in trust against the will of the true owners, which is us. Okay, so that's what's going on. Now the BLM claims they own it, the federal government claims they own it, and that's just not constitutionally correct.
Still a territory, what they're saying they own, right?
That's right. Okay, again, back to some of those laws, the federal government makes all the rules concerning a territory. That's in Article 4. Okay? In other words, a person that lives in a territory is not guaranteed his constitutional rights. He is not guaranteed the Bill of Rights. Now, they might allow him to, you know, have this right or that, but they're not, a person in a territory is not guaranteed the rights. Once it becomes a state, then they are. So you can see why they don't want to recognize us as a state, because they would have to recognize our grazing rights, because they are protected by state law. They would have to recognize your First Amendment rights. Remember what they did up there? They put your First Amendment areas up there. Why do you think they think they can get away with that? Because if it's treated like a territory, you don't have that right. Okay, when they arrested my brother down here on the road, okay, he was off the white line, and he was just like you guys are, just like this guy. He had his cell phone in one hand, and he had his iPad in the other, and he's videoing. Okay, I was right next to him, not further than he was away, and I had 4 snipers with their, and I looked at them binoculars, looked right down their scopes, right down their barrels, and they had 20 other agents come, and this is all he's doing, and they jump him and tear him to the ground and drive his face into the gravel with their knees. And why? Because they said they told us you have no right except you be in those protest areas. That was their words. Under territorial law, you have no rights until we become a state. So this is why our message to our governor is. Now I'll tell you about my other brother. He made a phone call to the Nevada State Governor's office. Now he didn't speak with the governor, so I'll catch him a little break right there, but he spoke with a gal in the office there. And the gal says, governor doesn't have any authority in the state of Nevada. He's like, let me clean out my ear. He goes, I want to make sure I heard that right. So you're telling me that he's the governor of the state of Nevada and he has no authority over the control of the state of Nevada? And she's like, that's correct. And he's like, I need to clean out my other ear. That just doesn't sound right. So he's like, all right, Nevada has a boundary, it has a shape, everything within that state is Nevada's, right? And he is the governor, correct? He is the governor, but you're saying he has no authority within the state. She goes, that's correct. He has no authority within the state. Okay, why would that be? The only way that would be is because it's still being treated as a territory. Now, in 1864, on October 31st, what happened? President Lincoln declared Nevada a state, did he not? I've read the speech. He declared it a state. If he declared it a state, and if it's truly a state, then it had to enter upon equal footing with the original 13 states, which means all of this land belongs to the state and their people, which means the Enabling Act, that forever, ended at that point. This is our battle. We believe that Nevada is a state. We believe that this land belongs to the people and is to be controlled by the people closest to the government closest to the people, which is the county. And we believe that our rights are protected by state law, and we have not broken any laws here on this ranch. And we're in complete compliance with the Constitution, the supreme law of the land.
Yeah!
One more question about the BLM agents. Do you believe that they were a private company, or do you believe that they were actually federal agents?
Some were federal agents, some were private company, but I don't know the details. This fellow had a question back here.
I would add that in Article 4, the United States shall maintain for the states a republican form of government.
That is right. And that is part of the guarantee. Okay? A lot of us have been taught that we live in a democracy. Okay? What does the Pledge of Allegiance say? And to this republic for which we stand. Okay? You will not find where it speaks about a democracy anywhere in our founding documents. Okay? A democracy is mob rule.
Rule of men. Yeah.
Rule of men. A republic is based upon principles. Principles. And the principles of freedom and liberty are espoused in this Constitution. And a republican form of government is supposed to protect those principles.
Quick question again. Why your father stopped paying in '93 to the feds?
Do they own the land? Should we be paying to them?
But before that he was paying, right?
All right. Are we not all ignorant at one time or another?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Okay,
Agree,
we had to
absolutely.
learn. We had to learn.
Yes.
And once we learned, then we stopped.
Thank you.
Sir, do you kind of describe the situation like when somebody buys a house or purchases a house? Do you describe it like once you do that, you're paying now that you're paying taxes to the government, it turns into rent to the government? Is it kind of like that situation in a way?
Well, let me explain what this grazing fee, because everybody keeps bringing this grazing fee up and they want to paint us as though we dodge taxes and that we're freeloaders and so forth. The grazing right, okay, was established by putting the feed, the water, into beneficial use. Okay, beneficial use means our animals ate the feed and they drank the water, and now man can use that because it creates red meat. We can utilize that. It's beneficial to man. Okay, so that's how the right was created. Now, the grazing right existed before BLM ever existed. Okay, so BLM now comes into existence, and interestingly enough, one of their mission statements was to protect these rights. How could they protect these rights if they didn't already exist? They acknowledged that they did exist, and that was part of their mission statement, to protect them. Now, the grazing fee, this is how it was divided. 12% went to the BLM for a management fee. Okay, what are they? The Bureau of Land Management. Okay, so we're going to pay them for some management fees. The other 88% went to grazing advisory boards, and the grazing advisory board would then help the ranchers put in, say, a water improvement. We talked about maybe helping us with that type of deal, or a fence, or a corral, or some other improvement. So 88% of that money was supposed to come back to the ranchers. All right, and they did do this. In fact, in the past, we received some of that money to put in some pipes and so forth. But again, the BLM only got 12% of it, a very small amount of that. All right, now you can only pay the grazing fee if you had a contract with the Bureau of Land Management, all right? And when you sign the contract, it said that they have all control of management and they can change the rules and you can't do anything about it, It's a real one-sided contract, okay? And so when a rancher signs a contract, he literally is giving up his rights to manage his own land. Now, when we saw that it was evident, okay, what did we say? When there's a design, it becomes evident, okay, that their goal was to manage us out of business. And isn't that evident? All the other ranchers are gone here, okay, isn't that evident? We said, we don't need your management anymore. We will manage our own ranch, okay? So we're not gonna pay you a management fee any longer. We're not gonna sign the contract with you. And as far as our improvements go, we'll stand on our own 2 feet and we'll pay our own bill. Now again, the Grazing Advisory Board was actually made up of ranchers. BLM had a seat, but they weren't the controlling interest. My father actually sat on the Grazing Advisory Board. Okay, so we were part of that group. But we're like, you know, we really don't need to be part of that group. We'll pay for our own improvements, and we'll manage our own ranch. And so because we had no contract with them any longer, number one, we couldn't pay the fee. We didn't want their management. And so when it comes down to what do we owe in grazing fees? Nothing, because we had no contract. They had no control to even graze it. So I hope that answers that question.
You had said
Yeah, thank you.
today that you did a lot to improve. Could you tell us what you did to improve the land?
Sure. There's been corrals built. Some of those are, my dad says some of these corrals were old when he was young. Okay, so we didn't particularly build them. Now I have fixed them up and we've built a few new corrals. We've put in lots of water lines. The feed out there is only good if the cow can eat it, and they can only eat it if there's water close by. So we've run pipelines and water lines and put in tanks, and we've built ponds, reservoirs. We don't have very many fences on this range, which may help us manage the cattle if we put a few in. And there are roads and trails, and the water improvements, a lot of those take head houses. Because a lot of the water on this mountain is not much more than just a wet spot in the ground. You can't even get water out of it unless you dig down and you build concrete structures and put in pipes to kind of gather up that little trickle of water. And then that little trickle of water is sometimes not more than just a few drips, like I said, just a little teeny trickle. And yet that little teeny trickle constantly running will fill up a big tank and water cattle. And so it's a lot of work to build one of those. And sometimes it's a lot of work to maintain those. And the water lines, you know, there's a lot of minerals in the water, and the minerals plug up the lines. It's a lot of work to keep the lines clear. And fences, you know, we like people that come and visit our ranch, but there's still some vandalism. They shoot holes in the water troughs, and they knock down trails sometimes. And, you know, it takes a lot of work to maintain all those. So, you know, these are some of the improvements that we're talking about.
So what do you think is going to happen, or the outcome of all of this? What do you feel in your heart is going to happen?
It depends upon you. Okay, it depends upon the people. It depends upon the states. Okay, we don't want things to go back to the way they were. All right. My father said when this all began, he goes, "I will sacrifice my entire herd. My cows don't matter that much. I will sacrifice my entire herd if I can bring about the freedom for this nation." Now, we got most of our cows back that day, and for that we feel very blessed. We wouldn't have been able to do it without you or the militia or the Almighty God. Okay?
Amen.
So we're
Okay, so Ryan, y'all grabbed a tank out of the river that was 11,000 gallon, correct? Salvaged it, recycled it. The BLM torched it, correct?
well, we didn't salvage that one out of the river. We purchased that one from someplace.
You purchased it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, with all the floods that have torn out the homes in Santa Clara and a few things, yeah, we've salvaged a few pieces of pipe here and there, culverts, but we haven't ever salvaged a tank.
And how
out of
much
the
does
river.
a tank that size run you?
Depends on the deal we get.
Okay, well we pick up 11,000 or 1,100 gallon ones for about $800 in southern Utah.
Yeah.
So you're talking 11,000 gallons.
11,000 gallon tank. Now, I'm trying to remember. I know we picked that one up out of Alamo, Nevada. It was loaded on a truck for us. We paid, geez, it sat in the yard for 10 years before we put it out there. I can't remember.
It's a lot of work to put it out there.
But I don't know, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 probably, I'm guessing, that we paid for that particular tank. You know, if we can get, you know, I know we've got several 10,000 gallon tanks or 5,000 gallon tanks or whatever, you know.
Is that the only one that was damaged?
That was the only tank that was damaged, but it wasn't the only line and water that was damaged. And then I know that they run a truck through a corral wall, you know, through the fence. They just pushed it over with their truck like they were trying to destroy it. Just having fun tearing crap up.
And so all the hay that's sitting on the BLM land right now,
okay.
I'm a God-fearing citizen, okay? My personal opinion is it's BLM hay. They paid for it, it's sitting there, you should not take it. However, at this point they have a big bill due to you, not you to them. And you do now have to clean up their mess. Your cattle is soft-hooved now, tender-hooved, right? So they can't be wandering far from the river. Is there a justification in bringing that down to feed your cattle?
Well, you know, it's not our hay, but you're right. I'm not, you know, I counted them. There's 52 bales still in twine and
those
several
are one-ton
others.
bales.
What's that?
1-ton bales.
They're 1-ton bales. Yeah, 52 1-ton bales, and there's several others that are broken and scattered. And you know, my greedy, selfish self says, yeah, I want to go get that hay.
Would that feed the cows until their hooves are healed?
Yeah, and you know, down here on the river where the sand is soft, and you notice the cows are grazing up and down here.
Right.
They're okay down here.
Right.
And their hooves will grow before they.
But
go
I
up
think
the
I
hills.
paid for some of that too, didn't I?
I'm sure you did.
Right?
Tax money probably paid for that.
So what will happen if this just sits there?
It rots.
The cows will eat it anyway because it's still there.
When
so,
they can get to it.
when they get
Can
to
they
it.
get access to it?
Not now.
Well, yeah, they can actually.
Is it soft enough all the way up there?
If they wanted to walk up there, there's no fence to prevent them. Put it
Right, but how about their hooves condition? Can they get up there to it?
It's sandy most of the way up there. They probably could.
So.
We need a cow whistler, a cow caller, huh?
Well, they don't need to eat the whole haystack at once. So we haven't really even thought about it too much. Yeah, we've thought about it. We haven't discussed it or made any type of decision to go up there and get that hay. So
and I understand with you, and I think that's a righteous decision, but I also think that if something happens and you have to put them all in corrals, you also have to feed them at that point.
We'll, I don't even know what to say about that. The hay's there. If they're not going to come and get it, it might as well not go to waste. That's all
That's
I
what
think.
I think.
Yeah.
No, I saw a news report that said there were only 6 cattle that were killed.
There's 7 head of cattle that we have found dead. We have found other places where they have buried cattle, but we haven't dug them up and discovered it. We're missing a total of 37 head that we know of. That's not counting how many calves were abandoned across the hills. I'll tell you an amazing thing, though. Yesterday, we found a little calf down below Overton. Little baby calf, little. He's been 2 weeks without his mother. Normally, they don't live 4 or 5 days without the mother. And I know that he hasn't been eating grass because whatever they pushed him through, he must have fell down on the ground or something and his tongue is cut. So that little fart has lived 2 weeks without food. Now we got him at the ranch house now and we're feeding him and hopefully he will live.
I thought he died this morning was what
Well,
your family said. So.
I haven't heard because I'm running around. Maybe
You're not
he
on
did.
Facebook? He did die this morning.
You know, that's too bad. But I'll tell you what, he lived 2 weeks, which was amazing, without a mother and without any food.
Where's PETA?
Well, you know what, we had them out here before all this started trying to, and they walked away. They're going to support government.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, there you go.